And during this training, I'm sure that you had time to read this over a little bit while I was on mute. But again, I will only discuss required reports as they relate to DAISI. I know there are a couple of other reports, such as the expenditure report that you are required to submit, but for more information about those, you can refer to the provider manual. The required reports are the program status report, the enrollment report, and the NRS performance report. So the program status report summarizes the student count, pre and post testing rates, attendance hours, enrollment hours, and units of instruction by instructional category. So this is a good report to keep an eye on throughout the year, and not just during reporting deadlines, just to make sure you're meeting that 65% post-testing requirement. The enrollment report shows generation for each funding type by line item, so it's a little bit more detailed than the fiscal year funding page in DAISI, which just shows you the generation for the instructional category as a whole, or for the funding type as a whole. And the NRS performance report shows enrollment, measurable skill gains for NRS eligible students. And again, those are students with 12 or more attendance hours. They are students that are error-free and not exclusively enrolled in vocational or foreign language GED classes. And previously, I may have mentioned a master list report, and I'm not sure, but it might still be in the required reports section in DAISI. But I was using an outdated source when I spoke about that, so I apologize for the misinformation. So the master list report is no longer a required report, and if you see it in the required report section, you can just go ahead and ignore it. So I'm going to use this time now to talk a little bit about the NRS performance POPs report, because it has changed a little bit from previous years. So I've just updated the DAISI 2.0 user guide with this new page called Appendix Required Reports. So it has information about each of the required reports, but the section that you might be most interested in is the NRS performance report. It has the definition of measurable skill gain, period of participation, when you're required to submit it. It talks about the students that are included. And then the really nice thing about this is it gives you a definition of the students that are in each of the tables and also an explanation of each of the columns. So if you download the report, and I know it might not be very user-friendly when you first glance at it, so I would highly recommend coming to this page and taking a look at the definition of each of the columns just so you know what students are referring to. So there are 4 reporting deadlines, one for each quarter of the year. The last one was on October 30th when you submitted the program status report and the NRS performance report. And typically during the second quarter, which is the next reporting deadline as this training is being recorded, and there are typically all 3 of the required reports are due on this reporting deadline. However, if you attended Kathy's meeting, her last checking in with ICCB meeting on Monday, you might have heard that the mid-year generation requirement has been waived. So you do not have to turn in the enrollment report on the next reporting deadline on January 30th, 2021. So again, we're just looking for the program status report and the NRS performance report at that time. So during this next portion of the training, we're going to review the reporting instructions. And these are something that Jane sends a memo about at each reporting deadline, but I wanted to just take a moment and walk you through them because I know sometimes it might be easier when you have someone explain it to you, and also I encourage you to ask any questions that you might have about this process while we're going through it. So the reporting, in order to generate required reports, there are 6 steps. First, you identify and correct all attendance errors. So during this step, you do not correct any other attendance errors in the system. You just focus on attendance errors. Then you can wait 24 hours or run a policy job. And the reason you do this is to make sure that all of those attendance errors are processed before you search for the other errors, and we'll talk about that in a second. Then you wait 24 hours or run another policy job to make sure that all of the errors have been processed and all of the students will show up in your required reports. Then you can go ahead and generate those required reports and sign them and send them to Jane Black. So for the first step, in order to identify and correct any attendance errors, you'll go to the Students List search page. It's the first page that you see when you first log into DAISI. And then you conduct a search for invalid attendance errors from the Student Error Status section, which is in the Advanced Search section, and it's all the way at the bottom. So you'll click on the Advanced Search bar to expand it, and then scroll all the way to the bottom to open the Student Error Status pane, and then click Invalid Attendance Error, Yes, and then click Submit. And yes, you will be provided a copy of these slides after the training. And then once you see the once your attendance error search has been completed, you'll see a list of students, and you can just go ahead and click on the class info icon of any of these students, and that'll take you straight to the class info page where the attendance errors appear. Once you are on the class info page, scroll to the very bottom of the page where you see this the class information. There's 3 different tables that you'll see that are related to classes, and you'll want to find the class labeled with an error symbol. So that's this highlighted, and it's a little bit increased in size. It's a circle, the red X in it. And you might notice on this page, there's also this yellow triangle with an exclamation point in the middle. That's a warning symbol. So it's a little bit different from an error symbol. It doesn't mean that a student will be excluded from your report. So during this step, it might be advisable just to overlook those and focus only on the errors, because those are the ones that will prevent students from appearing in your report. And then after this step, you'll want to wait 24 hours or run a policy job. And in order to run a policy job, you just click the Change Fiscal Year button in the top left corner of the screen, click Policy Jobs, and then fill out the necessary information and click Start Job. And then the next step is to go ahead and correct, identify and correct all other errors that you'll have in the system. So on the Students List and Search page, you'll start by filtering for students with at least 7.5 attendance hours. And the reason you want to start with this step is because this will save you the hassle of correcting errors for students who won't show up on any of your reports anyways. So this step filters for students that would show up on your reports if it weren't for the fact that they had an error. So by including this step in your search, you'll make sure that you're focusing only on the students who you want on your reports. Then you conduct a search for all other errors from the Student Error Status section. And again, that's all the way at the bottom of the Advanced Search page, the Advanced Search pane, rather. And this time you'll just select Overall Error Search, Yes, and then click Submit. So once you have that search completed, you'll see a list of students. And this time you can select anywhere on the student's name because we're not sure where the error is this time. It's not going to be on that class info page necessarily. So once you click on a student's name, you'll see an error banner that'll say student is in an error state. Sometimes it tells you what the error is, sometimes it doesn't, unfortunately. But the tab on which the error exists will be labeled with this error symbol. So you'll want to look to the banner and the error symbol to locate where the student error is. And once you've finished this step, then you can continue on and correct any errors that you find. The most common errors that I find at this stage are typically that students' status is incomplete, so the data entry person hasn't entered the employment status for the participant. And then next, you can wait 24 hours or run another policy job in order to make sure that all of those errors are processed in the system before you generate your reports. Step 5 is to generate and sign reports. In order to do that, you go to the reports section of DAISI. So from the ICCB homepage, you'll press the reports link. And then you'll find the required reports section and select whichever report you'd like to run first. Then you will go ahead and adjust the fields as you need to adjust them. Some reports require only certain funding types. And then you can click View Report. And during this step, I highly encourage you to read the reporting instructions that Jane sends out in her memo very carefully, as they contain important information about which version of each report need to be submitted. And then finally, you'll sign your reports and send them to Jane Black. So I know during the time that this training is conducted, sign and send sounds a little bit easier than it actually is, because most of us are working remotely right now. So as the next reporting deadline approaches, look out for instructions from Jane as to how to handle signatures electronically, because she'll tell you how to handle that. And that is all that I have for you today. So I did see a couple of questions pop up into the chat. Before we get there, again, I just encourage everyone to check out the online help guide. It has a frequently answered questions section that I think would be really advisable to visit before answering any of your questions, because a lot of the questions that come up have already been asked. If you have any technical questions or system malfunctions, you're welcome to email the DAISI support desk. Any policy and general and policy related questions can be directed to me or your regional support staff person.